If we get cocky and proud, we get criticized. We get the tall poppy syndrome. If we get humble, we get lifted up. Nature's trying to get us back into authenticity. Most likely in your life, at various moments in your life, you've met individuals that you looked up to, admired, were drawn to, maybe infatuated with, and tried to, you might say, duplicate or imitate or envy. And the moment you did that and you put them above you and saw them as greater than you or more skilled in some capacity, possibly more intelligent, possibly more successful in business or achieving, possibly more wealthy or more stable in relationships, or possibly more socially connected and networked, or possibly more physically fit and attractive, or more spiritually aware. The moment you exaggerate them and put them above you and think they're greater than you, just like in a mathematical sign, it makes you, relative to them, seem smaller. So when you exaggerate others, you tend to minimize yourself. When you infatuate with others, you tend to, in a sense, devalue yourself. Now, what's interesting is when you are infatuated or looking up to somebody and thinking they're greater, you are conscious of the behaviors or traits or actions or inactions that they're displaying or demonstrating that you admire. You're conscious of those and exaggerating those with a bias, and you're minimizing the downsides. You're minimizing the depreciable activities of these individuals. So you're, in a sense, exaggerating how great they are. When you do that and you become conscious of their upsides and unconscious of their downsides, you in turn become conscious of your downsides and unconscious of your upsides. And you become too humble to admit what you see in them inside yourself. This is what leads to intimidation, difficulty speaking, difficulty selling. The moment we look up to somebody and minimize ourselves, we automatically are devaluing ourselves. We're not authentic. We're not reflective. We're deflective. That means we're too humble to admit what we see in them inside us. We're deflecting, disowning, dismembering, and disempowering those traits in us and playing small. And the moment we do, because we exaggerate them and minimize us, we inject their values into our life and we try to imitate them. In all probability, you've had moments when you're highly infatuated with somebody, and the first few weeks of dating them, possibly in a relationship, you started doing things you normally didn't do in your life. Your normal priorities were all of a sudden set aside, and you started doing things you normally didn't do. Strange things. I remember when I was infatuated and exaggerating a girl when I was at the University of Houston, when I was around 20 years old. I was so infatuated that I gave up my studies of physics and mathematics and chemistry and all the pre-med sciences to go and do pom-pom dancing with her, because she was a trainer of the Kilgore Rangerettes and pom-pom dancing, halftime entertainment at football. So I was doing strange things I would never do because I was exaggerating her, minimizing me, infatuated with her, self-depreciating me, and fearing her loss in my life. Because anytime you infatuate and exaggerate them, you fear their loss. Anytime you exaggerate, you fear their loss and you inject their values. The way you know you inject their values in your life is you hear yourself saying, I should be doing this. I ought to be doing this. I need to be doing this. I must do this. I got to do this. I have to do this. All of the, what I call the imperative language. The moment you exaggerate them and minimize you, you're not being your authentic self. You're trying to live in other people's values. And no human being can sustain living in other people's values. It's non-sustainable. Every individual lives by a set of priorities, a set of values that are unique to them. And whatever's highest on their value, they spontaneously are inspired to do. And whenever they've injected the values of others, those values have a competition with your own highest values, and it creates an internal conflict and leads to uncertainties. And the uncertainty that you feel when you're minimizing yourself to somebody else, the self-depreciation, is a feedback, normal biological feedback to let you know you're inauthentic. Anytime you're hearing yourself with those imperatives inside your head, I should, I ought to, I supposed to, I got to, I have to, I must, and you think you're having limited beliefs, which are nothing more than their injected values that you're trying to live by when you can't, because you have your own values and you're creating conflicts. That uncertainty, that internal conflict, that internal noise in the brain, that self-depreciation, and all those imperative languages are symptoms of you trying to be living in other people's values you've got on a pedestal. If we put people on pedestals, we'll put ourselves in the pit. If we exaggerate them, we'll minimize us. And we are not authentic. Our essential self is now overruled by our existential self. Our existential self is ruled by external sources that we infatuate with. And as you know, when you're highly infatuated with somebody, when you go to sleep at night, they can occupy space and time in your mind and run you. You can't even sleep at night hardly because you're so infatuated. So anytime you exaggerate another individual and have inequity in your perceptions and subjective bias and skewed views of these individuals, because the truth is they're not up, they're just human beings. But if you exaggerate them and minimize you and not honor what you see in them inside you and deflect it, you're going to diminish yourself and place smaller than you are. And that's a form of dysmorphia. Just like people have body dysmorphia and they can't see the magnificence of their body, you can have dysmorphia in your intellectual pursuits, your business, your finance, your family and relationships, your social, your physical health and well-being and physical, and then your spiritual. And anytime you exaggerate somebody else and minimize you, you are inauthentic. You're not you. And the magnificence of who you are is far greater than any delusions you've made on yourself. So you cannot empower yourself putting people on pedestals. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said, envy is ignorance and imitation is suicide. We're not here to put people on pedestals. We're here to put them in our hearts. We are here to have reflective awareness, the highest level of awareness we have. Now, we also have the other side of the equation, where we now are conscious of the downsides of people and unconscious of their upsides. And we resent them, and we withdraw from them, and we despise them, and we want to avoid them. In the process of doing that, we then exaggerate ourselves. We become now conscious of our upsides and unconscious of our downsides, and go into pride and self-righteousness and get arrogant and inflated, looking down on them. When we were infatuated, we were deflated. When we're now resentful, we're inflated. When we're inflated and proud and arrogant, we're not being ourselves. We're inauthentic, and we're non-essential again. We're in an existential view about ourselves, and we're run by the outside world again. But now we're conscious of the downsides of them and unconscious of the upside of downsides of ourselves. So we're too proud to admit what we see in them inside us. And we basically deny what we see in them, and we disown, disempower, deflect, and dismember those parts of ourselves, and in a sense, skew our view of ourselves. Where our inauthenticity, when we're inauthentic like that, we're puffed up and exaggerated, we've lost sight of who we are again. And again, now, because we puff ourselves up and becomes values go from those who have the most power perceptually to those that have least power, instead of injecting values of people we put above us, we now project values to people we put below us. And now we go around and we project our values onto them and expect them to live in our values. And we go around and we say, you should, you ought to, you're supposed to, you got to, you have to, you must, you need to. And we again hear these projected imperatives, but not internal inside ourselves, where we think we're, not able to stay focused and empowered, and we're sabotaging everything else. But now we're projecting onto them and thinking they're doing it. Now we think that they're basically sabotaging and can't stay focused because we're expecting them to live in our values. Well, anytime you have been in a relationship and you projected your values onto somebody and thought you were self-righteous and thought you knew better than them, and you got narcissistic and expected them to live in your values, you found out that that doesn't work. And anytime you're infatuated with somebody and you inject those values, You end up becoming altruistic, trying to sacrifice for other people, and that doesn't work. Neither narcissism or altruism by themselves are sustainable. Trying to get something for nothing or trying to give something for nothing. When you're minimizing you, you're trying to give something and you're afraid of losing somebody. When you're resentful to somebody, you try to get something and fear the gain of those individuals. Both of those are deflective awarenesses. Both of those are disempowerments. Both of those are not owning all parts of yourself. Both of those are inauthentics, facades, and personas. The entire field of personal development is an expression of those personas and the integration of those. Write this today in a scientific journal that I read this morning. They found out that dopamine and serotonin and some of the amino acid transmitters in the brain have just now been found not to just be only positive and negative, but actually integrative. So our transmitters are attempting to integrate our brain, attempting to bring those two personas into the being. Our exaggerated self-righteous persona and our minimized self-conscious persona is what has been called elevated and depressed self-esteem. But when they're integrated, they make true self-worth. And our true self-worth occurs when they're integrated and we're objective and we have reflective awareness and we're not too proud or too humble to admit what we see in others inside ourselves. And we're not skewing things with subjective biases. We're in a state of objectivity, which is neutrality, where we don't fear the loss of that which we seek and we don't fear the gain of that which we try to avoid. And we're no longer in our amygdala trying to escape with our instincts the pains and looking for with our impulse the pleasures. And striving for that which is unavailable and trying to avoid that which is unavoidable is a source of human suffering. So anytime we're inauthentic, we go into our, quote, suffering mode. And the suffering is actually a feedback to let us know we're inauthentic. Our physiology, psychology, sociology, and theologies are all designed to bring us back into authenticity. But what happens when all of a sudden you go and you own the things you see in others? I've said in my Breakthrough Experience program, which I've taught 1,000 many times, over 1,100 and some times, I've shared that at the level of the soul, the state of unconditional love, where there's no judgment, nothing's missing in you. You're not too proud, you're not too humble to admit what you see in others inside yourself. That is the essential self. That is the essence of your being, or some call it the ground of being. That is where you are not reactive, but you're active. You're inspired. When you live by your highest values and you're most objective, you're most likely to access that state. That's why our identity revolves around what we value most in our life. And whenever we live by highest priority, we automatically awaken it. But in the Breakthrough Experience, I have people that are resenting people, infatuating with people, exaggerating and minimizing themselves, and trying to be loved for who they are when they're not even willing to be who they are. So when you're exaggerating yourself, you're not willing to be who you are. When you're minimizing yourself, you're not who you are. How are you expecting somebody to love you for who you are when you're not even willing to be it? It's only in a state of grace, only in a state of inspiration, only in the state of real love, where you really have the balanced state, where you're reflective, and you own your hero and your villain. You own those things on the pedestal in the pit. And you don't try to deny any of them. You're not too proud or too humble to admit what you see in others inside you, where you have reflective awareness, where the essential self emerges, and the integration of your personas and personal development are integrated, which is what the brain is attempting to do, to bring us to our highest value, where we're objective, where things are balanced and we're not judging. Only there do we have the essential self. And only there do we empower ourselves. That's why in the Breakthrough Experience, I want people to do the Demartini method, because the Demartini method, which is a series of questions to enlighten you and to help you see the hidden order in the apparent chaos, makes you go and look at what specific trait, action, inaction do I perceive this individual displaying or demonstrating that I admire most or despise most. And I identify what those traits, actions, or inactions are that I'm judging. Then I go to a moment where and when I perceive myself displaying or demonstrating the same or similar specific traits, action, inactions that I perceive in them inside me. And I look carefully And I look for them and identify where it was, when it was, who it was to, and who perceived me doing it, until the quantity and the quality of it match what would I see in these other people. And I own those traits of the hero and the villain. And when I realize that I'm the hero and the villain, and that I'm not nice without mean, or mean without nice, or kind without cruel, or cruel without kind, I have every trait, and I need every trait in order to function. I don't need to get rid of half of myself to love myself. I'm both sides. The truth of your nature is that you're both. And the fantasy is you're going to get rid of half of yourself and be only one-sided. That is the biggest farce, the biggest futility, the biggest fantasy that is promoted on this planet, morally leading to hypocrisies that keep people trapped and disempowered, striving for that which is unavailable, and creating these polarities of judgment which embondage us. So when we go in there and identify where we've done it to the same degree and own the traits of these people that we see above us and below us, and have reflective awareness where the seer, the seeing, and the seen are the same, all of a sudden our judgments calm down. And then the traits that we admire, we go in there and go to a moment where and when you perceive this individual displaying or demonstrating the specific trait, action, and acts you admire. And in that moment, and from that moment till now, how is it a drawback? How is it a disservice? What's the downsides? Because if you're blind to the downsides, it's time to intuitively ask the question, what are they? Otherwise, you'll be blind by an infatuation and then eventually discover the downsides, broadsided by it. Better to be aware now. Why not have the wisdom of the ages without the aging process instead of the wisdom of the ages with the aging process? And then go to the moment where and when you perceive this individual displaying or demonstrating a specific trait, action, and action you despise or resent. At that moment, and from that moment till now, the present, how specifically was an upside? What was the benefit? What was the advantages that it offered? And be accountable, which means bring your mind into a balance. Be accountable to see both sides of an event. All events are neutral until somebody judges them with a skewed subjective bias and doesn't see the whole. How are you going to have mindfulness if you're trying to empty your mind of half of the content by being subjectively biased with an opinion that's stored by wounds of the past? And it's wise to ask the questions, to equilibrate the mind, to liberate the mind, to balance the mind, because you can't have a balanced physiology without a balanced mentality. And this is what the neurotransmitters are showing. Our actions are going to be a byproduct of our perceptions. We balance our perceptions, we have more moderate actions. If not, we have extreme volatilities and perturbations in our perceptions and actions. So the moment we own those, the moment we neutralize those, and then we go to the moment when we displayed it and go find out the upsides or downsides of those and balance those out. So we dissolve our pride and shame. When we dissolve our pride and shame and dissolve our infatuation, resentment, we access our authentic self. And then if we go to a moment where and when we perceive these individuals displaying those traits, the opposite traits to what they displayed, to whoever they were displaying it to, we take away the labels that make us rigid in our perceptions of them and allow them to be just human beings with sets of values, and they respond to their perceptions. And sometimes they'll be nice and sometimes mean and sometimes kind, sometimes cruel. And when we understand that, we understand they're a human being with a set of values that we can honor and respect and communicate in. And then we realize that there's no reason to judge that individual, and there's no reason to judge ourselves in turn. Then we go and find out whenever they did, we find out who is doing the opposite and balance the equation, which then helps us transcend the labels and transcend the judgment. And then we crack the fantasy about how we expected them to be when we resent them, or the nightmare of how we would not want them to be when we're infatuated with them. And we crack those by asking what's the downside or the upside of the opposite behavior. And once we do, we realize that this individual has nothing except something to be loved. This individual is just a human being with a set of values, living congruently with their values, but we, with our subjective biases, didn't see it. And when we do, we did not live authentically. And then we projected onto them an expectation based on that. And we create unrealistic expectations on them to live in our values or us to live in their values. And this disempowers us. This creates a facade, a persona, a mask that covers up our authentic self. The essential self, the existing, absolute, fundamental, universal, authentic self is truly empowered, has nothing missing, owns all the traits, doesn't waste its time trying to get rid of half of itself, doesn't waste its time trying to get rid of half of anybody else's stuff, They get on with priority, and we're not here to compare ourselves to others. We're here to compare our daily actions to our own dreams, our own highest priority actions. If we identify what's really highest in our values, stick to the action steps that we found that are most effective in fulfilling them, stick to those, we're less judging. We all know that when we do high priority actions in a day, we're more resilient, more adaptable, more expanded, more inspired, more fulfilled, more leader-oriented, more walking our talk, and we end up having more resilience and adaptability when we come home. We don't react to people, and we know how to handle situations because we're living in our executive center, our forebrain, instead of our hindbrain. In the Breakthrough Experience program that I teach, as I said, almost every week or so, I help people with the Demartini method help attain essential self, the authentic self. Everybody wants to be loved and appreciated for who they are. If they had only 24 hours to live, they would go and love and appreciate people that have contributed to their lives. You're not going to love and appreciate yourself when you're proud or shamed. You're not going to love and appreciate other people when you're infatuated or resentful. You're only going to love and appreciate you and others when you're reflective and you're authentic and you've transcended your personas. Again, personal development is the integration of the personas into the true self. And anytime you exaggerate yourself, you also simultaneously, the way the chemistry in the brain is set up for neurochemistry and electronic chemistry, anytime you go into pride and get addicted to pride, you create a persona that balances it, the shame. And anytime you go into shame, you create another dissociated pride facade. These two personas are actually simultaneously integrated in the brain to get the authentic self. So our brain is an authentic, highest value seeking system. Our physiology will create symptoms to give us feedback to get us there. All of the symptoms that we have in illnesses are actually trying to get us authentic and get us back to love. That's why gratitude and love are still the greatest healers. All of the sociological, all the psychological, and all the theological reverberations from our environment are all trying to get us back in equilibrium. If we get cocky and proud, we get criticized. We get the tall poppy syndrome. If we get humble, we get lifted up. Nature's trying to get us back into authenticity. Every single thing that's going on in your life is trying to help you and is on the way to that, not in the way. So having the opportunity to actually ask quality questions that normalize the mind. So if you don't integrate your own mind and you don't have self-governance and you don't listen to the subtleties of your physiology and psychology, which is autotelic and homeostatic, you automatically have to have sociology and theology, which is politics and religion, to give you moral injunctions and shoulds and oughts and supposed tos, because they're going to inject and you're going to subordinate. You're going to brain offload decisions because you're uncertain, and you're going to give your power away, and you're going to try to live in other people's values, which is futile. And that's why most people live quiet lives of desperation, not a life of inspiration. That's why I want people to come to the Breakthrough Experience. That's why I want them to learn the Demartini method. I want them to know how to take themselves, no matter what they've experienced in their world around them, in their perceptions, and integrate them and balance them and liberate them for the authentic self so they're empowered, so they can make decisions on themselves, and their perception, decisions, and actions are under governance. And they can activate their natural born leader that wants to create a legacy, because every time you're authentic, you expand your space and time horizons and eventually go beyond your own mortal life and you leave an immortal legacy. I call it the posthumous biography of your own life, that you're lived by design, not by duty. So by asking quality questions that equilibrate the mind and liberate you from the bondage of infatuation, resentments, and prides and shames, you are freed to be authentic, where you love, you feel inspired, you're grateful, you're present, you're certain, and you're enthused. I call those the 6 transcendental states of an authentic human being. And again, our soul at the highest level, the state of unconditional love, our celestial, most broad-minded, overviewing state of mind, the witness that's overriding the agents of judgment inside us. When we access that part of ourselves by living by higher priority, not lower priority, we access a very profound and fulfilling state that we're capable of doing extraordinary feats with. So to activate this essential self, it's asking the right questions. And the Demartini method, I've designed it for the last 47, almost 48 years of working on it. I've designed it based on neurochemistry and neurology and psychology and philosophy and physics. I've woven it together into a science. It's absolutely, it's reproducible, it's duplicatable. If you learn it, if you master it, you've got it. You can take anything. There's nothing your mortal body can experience that your mortal soul, the state of unconditional love, can't transcend, can't turn into opportunity, can't be grateful for and move on. And anything we're not grateful for is baggage. And we weigh ourselves down with gravitational entropy. We undergo disorder, we age. And I believe that the aging process is a symptomatology of living by personas, and the youthfulness that we have, the vitality that we have, the enthusiasm we have, the spirit inside, the divine within us is awakened to the degree of our authenticity. When our human will now matches divine will, as some theologians said, we're not caught in the vicissitudes and perturbations of all the emotions of an extrinsic world, which is hallucinative at best, according to the Scientific American September edition of 2019 version. It's not, we don't have to live in our hallucinative, elusive world. We can actually see things as they are, and the magnificence of who they are is greater than all the fantasies we keep imposing on there. So the essential self, the true self, is the powerful self. And the Demartini method and the breakthrough experience is designed to help you awaken it and bring it to the surface. If you want to be loved and appreciated for who you are, it's time to be who you are. And if you want to love people for who they are, you got to find out what their highest values are and understand that that's their decisions are based on that. Every decision that we make, self or other, is based on what we believe will give us the greatest advantage or disadvantage in the moment to our highest values. So if we understand that, we can live more authentic lives. So I just wanted to take a few moments to share something about authenticity. And we call it expressing it, but we will automatically express it the moment we transcend the judgment. So we all do judgments. There's no end to the judgments. We're going to go on to the next judgment, but we don't want to stay stuck in one judgment for the rest of our life, running our story, become victims of history. We want to become masters of destiny. So we go from one judgment, we transcend it, we look back, we're grateful for it, we move on to the next one. And we take that one and we go on the next one. That's why I want you to learn the method and come to the breakthrough experience. And even if you've been to the breakthrough experience, and even though you sometimes, some people come to the seminars and they okay, I've been there, done that. Well, I assure you, some of the people that have done the most profound accomplishments that I've known over the last 30-something years since I've been teaching breakthrough, the people that go in there and master the principles, not just experience them, not just hear about them and then forget about them, but master them. So even if you've been before, come back and come and master them. I'm constantly upgrading and updating and refining the things and teaching it more masterfully as I go. But I want you to learn those tools because I guarantee you they will give you a gift in life. You'll say thank you when you master it. You'll see life through different eyes, a different lens, and you'll see the magnificence of yourself because the truth is, it's there. The essential self is magnificent. The persona, false self, is insignificant. So that's my little presentation for the week. And I also want to make a mention of a webinar that we're doing that many of you have had challenges. Some of you not. Some of you are booming as a result of the corona, Saint Corona as I call it. But if you still have some challenges, it's wise to come and experience this one. From setbacks to comebacks, turning challenge into inspired opportunity. Please tell people about it. Share the message. If you got something out of this one, please pass it on to other people. It's through you telling other people that we reach more people to do it. And the more people you have around you that understand the principles, the more you're likely to live it. Because you have people around you that hold you accountable for those. But in the process of doing it, from setbacks to comebacks, turning challenge and opportunity, and please take advantage of all the things we have on our website, our podcast, the Demartini Show, all the things on the media and our website, the value determination process that we have for you to help set priorities in your life to live more inspired lives. And thank you for your attention today. I'll see you at the breakthrough experience. Take advantage of learning the Demartini method. And until our next week, have a fantastic week. Get inspired, live by priority, delegate lower priority things, and know that the magnificence of who you are is the true you. So give yourself permission to be you. Thank you for joining me for this presentation today. If you found value out of the presentation, please go below and please share your comments. We certainly appreciate that feedback. And be sure to subscribe and hit the notification icons. That way I can bring more content to you and share more to help you maximize your life. I look forward to our next presentation. Thank you so much for joining.